Welcome everyone to another deep dive.
Good to be here.
Today we're going to try and cut through some of the noise surrounding a relationship that, well, it seems pretty complex lately. That's the one between Greece and Israel. Now, if you've been keeping an eye on international news, you've probably seen some reports, maybe even warnings, suggesting things are, let's say, strained.
Right. Those headlines definitely caught my eye, too.
Yeah, remember those quite alarming stories about a possible day of rage aimed at tourists? It painted a pretty tense picture.
It certainly did.
So the real question we want to tackle today is, has that friendship actually been damaged? Or is there maybe a deeper, more, resilient story going on underneath?
And that's our goal, right? To kind of bypass the immediate headline.
Exactly. Our mission here is to go straight to the sources, look at the facts, and figure out what's really happening with the ties between Greece and Israel. And I think, well, I suspect you might find some surprising things that challenge those common narratives.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. When we're talking about international relations, it's just so important to separate the media picture, which, let's face it, can often be about grabbing attention or focusing on just one moment for the actual reality of how countries connect.
Especially in the Middle East.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Given how complex and, frankly, how fast things change in the security situation there, news cycles can really blow specific incidents out of proportion or even get them wrong sometimes. But these real diplomatic, economic relationships, they're built on something much deeper. Strategic foundations.
So you really need to peel back the layers.
You absolutely do to get the full picture.
Okay, so let's start with that day of rage idea then, because that was definitely a vivid headline. For a lot of people, quite worrying too.
Understandably.
Was it really as widespread, as threatening as some of those reports made it sound, or was there, more going on?
Well, based on what our sources tell us, that whole day of rage thing, supposedly against Israelis who were just trying to have a holiday in Greece, it turned out to be mostly, and this is a direct quote, an inflated media balloon.
An inflated media balloon. Okay.
Yeah. Now, were there any incidents?
No.
Yes. There were reportedly a few isolated protest incidents. But the level of fear, the dire predictions, it seems really disproportionate to what actually happened on the ground.
Right.
And here's something really crucial for you, the listener, to grasp. Public protests in Greece, they often reflect internal arguments, different viewpoints within Greek society itself.
So it's not necessarily about foreign policy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These demonstrations, even when they're visible, they really don't represent the country's official policy or the government's actual stance towards visitors or international partners. Make that distinction is, well, it's fundamental if you want to understand the real dynamics.
That makes a lot of sense, especially thinking about how quickly those kinds of stories can just, boom, spread online. So, okay, let's pull back from those immediate headlines then. Let's look bigger picture, more historical context. What was the relationship like between Greece and Israel, say, before the last couple of decades? Was it always this, strong strategic alignment we hear about now?
Oh, not at all. Actually, quite the opposite for a long time.
Really?
Yeah. For a big chunk of time, really up until the early 1990s, Greece generally followed what people called a relatively pro-Arab policy.
Okay. Why was that?
Well, it was a mix of things. Historical factors, strong cultural ties Greece has with the broader Middle East, its own geopolitical positioning, sometimes its role in the non-aligned movement. Lots of reasons.
Interesting.
And it's pretty striking during most of that time, Greece didn't even have full diplomatic relations with Israel. That tells you a lot about how different the landscape was back then.
Right. So this is where it gets really interesting then, because our sources are showing that over the last, 30 plus years, there's been this huge shift.
Huge is the right word.
It's like the pendulum just swung completely the other way. What happened? What were the catalysts for that kind of dramatic change?
You're absolutely right. The change has been profound. The ties between Athens and Jerusalem really started strengthening, and fast, in the early 2000s.
Okay.
A really big factor, a major catalyst, was actually the breakdown in relations between Israel and Turkey around that time.
Ah, okay. That created an opening.
Exactly. It opened up new geopolitical space for Israel in the Eastern Mediterranean. But it wasn't just about replacing one relationship with another. It was also about shared interests starting to line up.
Like what?
Well, Greece was looking to boost its regional energy security, its geopolitical influence, and Israel.
Yeah.
Israel was very keen on developing its own huge offshore natural gas finds.
Right, the Eastern Med gas fields.
Precisely. So you had this shared vision emerge, and that quickly led to really extensive, deep strategic cooperation. Not just energy, though that's key. Tourism boomed between the two. Huge amounts of Israeli investment flowed into Greek real estate, and maybe most importantly, increasingly close security and defense collaboration.
Wow. So across the board.
Pretty much. Those joint natural gas projects in the Eastern Med, they're like the perfect example of this mutual understanding, this commitment to trying to build regional peace and stability. It creates real economic and strategic links that just reinforce the partnership.
So it sounds like it's moved way beyond just, good feelings. It's built on some pretty solid ground.
Very solid strategic ground.
Which brings us to challenging times. How did this strong relationship hold up when things got really tough? I'm thinking particularly after the awful events of October 7th. How did Greece respond then?
Greece's reaction was, well, incredibly fast and very supportive. It really showed the strength of that bond.
How so?
Athens was actually among the first countries to offer aid to Israel right after the attacks. For example, they set up an air bridge almost immediately.
An air bridge?
Yeah, to help Israeli citizens get back home from wherever they were, or to help people who were stuck in transit find a safe way. That's a pretty big logistical step to take in a crisis situation,
Absolutely.
And on top of that, the Greek Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, he was one of the very first world leaders to actually arrive in Israel to show solidarity in person.
Wow.
That wasn't just symbolic. It was a clear, high-level political signal backed up by practical support right when Israel was facing this profound crisis.
Yeah.
It really underlined how deep that strategic alliance goes.
That is a powerful statement for sure. Okay, but what about the money side, the economy? With all that media noise we talked about, the protests, did Israeli investors in Greece get nervous? Did investments dry up?
That's a great question. And interestingly, our sources are really clear on this. Israeli investments in Greece, especially in things like real estate, which has been booming, they've continued at full strength. No significant change. That's the assessment. Both governments, Greek and Israeli, they're still very much committed to encouraging that foreign investment.
Yeah.
And maybe even more importantly, they're committed to maintaining regulatory and economic stability.
Which is key for investors.
Absolutely. It builds confidence. Look, there's this company, Homega. They're a big Israeli player in Greek real estate. Been there since 2016. They've actually come out and said publicly that their personal and business relationships in Greece are still incredibly strong.
Despite everything.
Despite everything. They stress it's all based on mutual trust and respect. And that's the kind of foundation that lets business keep going even when times are tough. It tells you the underlying economic ties are really resilient. They're often driven by long-term strategy, not just reacting to today's headlines or protests.
Okay, so this brings up, I think, a really important question then. How do we square that? How do we reconcile those occasional, sometimes pretty loud public protests or strong opinions we see with these very clear, very strong government ties and these ongoing economic commitments? For you listening, how do you hold both those things in your head at once?
That is the crucial distinction, isn't it? And it really speaks to how mature this relationship has become. Like we mentioned earlier, those public reactions, the protests in Greece, they're often, really often, about internal disagreements.
Inside Greece itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or they reflect specific political views within parts of Greek society. They genuinely do not represent the country's official policy towards Israel.
Okay.
And importantly, our sources confirm this. These public demonstrations, yeah, they make the news, but they have not altered the diplomatic and economic atmosphere between the two countries.
So the core relationship isn't affected.
That's what the evidence suggests. Both the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they've been totally consistent. They've made it clear that there has been no change in official policy.
They're still talking.
Definitely. They continue to maintain open and constructive dialogue at all levels. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it just highlights their shared mutual commitment to trying to foster stability and peace in a region that is, let's be honest, incredibly complex and always shifting.
Right.
The governments are focused on the strategic stuff, understanding that state-to-state relations often have to kind of rise above internal debates if you want long-term regional stability.
So really, if we manage to strip away the headlines, the sort of immediate reactions, the noise, what we're actually seeing isn't some damaged friendship. It sounds much more like a genuine partnership. One that's been built pretty carefully, pretty strategically over many years. It's kind of a powerful reminder, isn't it, that relationships between countries, maybe like relationships between people, they aren't just tested or proven when things are easy.
maybe even more so when things are tough.
Yeah, perhaps even more when facing challenges together.
And what's really striking here is just how strong that foundation seems to be. For you listening, I think it's a great reminder to try and keep, patience, sound judgment, and a broad perspective when you're taking in the news, especially about these really complex international situations.
It's easy to get caught up in the moment.
Very easy.
Yeah.
But the lasting strength, the strategic depth of this Greece-Israel partnership, despite the outside pressures, despite sometimes quite vocal internal opinions, it's a really compelling example of how real connections can last and maybe even get stronger through tough times. It shows that not every protest automatically changes government policy, right?
Absolutely. So maybe something to think about as you go about your day is this. How often do those fleeting, often quite sensational headlines truly capture the complicated long-term reality of what's happening globally?
It's a good question to ask.
Maybe focusing instead on the actual cooperation, the sustained commitments, the underlying strategic interests. Maybe that gives us a much richer and definitely more accurate picture of international relations than just the loudest news report of the day, something to mull over.